I can speak now to the Conservative MP Dominic Grieve, who has some concerns, to put it mildly, about the bill. Dominic Grieve, after conference season, what needs to happen to the bill?
The bill's going to come into committee of the whole House. We've got 64 hours to consider it, which I think is probably adequate, but we might need a bit more time, and the government's indicated it would make that time available if it's needed. And we need to go through it with a tooth comb, and there are three principal areas that need to be looked at. The first is that the government's really got to improve the mechanism for scrutiny by Parliament and how these statutory instruments are dealt with and the method by which they're dealt with. And if the government does that, that will greatly improve the legislation, which at the moment, frankly, puts far too much power into the hands of the executive.
And if it doesn't?
Well, I think if it doesn't, then the government risks being defeated in the committee stage in the House of Commons. I think that must be a real possibility. But I think it's hypothetical because the government's shown clear indications of listening on this, and I hope very much we'll make some progress.
How worried are you? I mean, is this something that we should be fundamentally concerned about?
We should always be fundamentally concerned about handing legislative authority to the executive, because the power that we are giving the government is of a very unusual character. Now, that's not to say the government doesn't have a legitimate problem, which is that it's trying to get Brexit through, which is hugely complex and very difficult, and trying to do it in a short period. So realistically, doing it by primary legislation, which is the proper way of doing it, I suppose, in a purist way, is impossible. So I recognise the government has got to take Henry VIII powers, but there's got to be a parliamentary system for scrutinising and controlling that. And if we get that, then that's already going to be a very important stage forward.
What do you say to MPs like David Lammy, Labour MP, who has accused you and others of being all bark and no bite? If you really are worried about it in the way that you've outlined, shouldn't you be doing something a bit more dramatic and radical?
Well, I reverse the question. What is David Lammy's view about whether we should facilitate Brexit in a non-chaotic fashion? If we don't enact this piece of legislation, or at least a piece of legislation which largely does the same thing, then we would still have Brexit at the end of it, but it would be complete and total legal chaos. So we do have a responsibility to do this, and I say that as somebody who believes that leaving the EU is a great historic mistake. But we've got to do it, and it's Parliament's duty to do it.
Thank you very much, Dominic Grieve.